Today we're going to be looking at standard RL.7.5. It says, analyze how a drama's or poem's form or structure contributes to its meaning. Now today we're only going to look at the drama portion of it. Another day we'll look at the poem form. So let's look at this story together and let's look at it. There's a couple of vocabulary words that you have to know in order to look at a drama. And a drama, one form of a drama is a play. And with a play, you have to know what dialogue is, which in dialogue in a play is when the characters are talking. And you also have to know what stage direction is. And stage direction is, it describes the setting, it tells you about the characters, and it tells you how they should act and speak and behave. So, let's look at this play. Usually a play is broken down into acts and scenes. So if you'll see, we're going to be looking at some excerpts from Diary of Anne Frank play. So let's look at Act 1, Scene 1. And the play is based on a young Jewish girl's diary, which details struggles endured by her family and friends when they had to go into hiding in an attic in Amsterdam during World War II. So the directions gave us a little background knowledge about this play. So let's look at it. The curtain rises on an empty stage. It is late afternoon, November 1945. The rooms are dusty, the curtains in rags, chairs and tables are overturned. The door at the foot of the small stairwell swings open. Mr. Frank comes up the steps into view. He stands looking slowly around, making a supreme effort at self-control. He is weak, ill, his eyes caught by something lying on the floor. It's a woman's white glove. He holds it to his hand, and suddenly all of his self-control is gone. He breaks down crying. We hear footsteps on the stairs. Miep Gis comes up, looking for Mr. Frank. Miep is a Dutch girl of about 22. She's pregnant. Her attitude toward Mr. Frank is protective, compassionate. And then there you look, and here you see your characters. Miep, are you all right, Mr. Frank?
Yes, Miep. Yes.
So, we're going to look at this portion of the play. Now, what we're going to have to do is, if you'll notice, all these up the top, the words are slightly turned and they look a little different. They're italicized. If you'll notice, that is all what we call stage direction. And we can determine a lot about the play and understand it better through the stage direction. So, let's look at it. Let's see some things about this stage direction. First of all, remember, stage direction tells us the setting, as well as the characters. So I know from looking at this, the setting is going to be late afternoon in November. And what else do I know about it? I also know that it's in a dusty room and the chairs are turned over. So obviously no one has lived in this place for a very long time. That's one thing I know. Also about the characters, I know that Mr. Frank, he's weak and ill. Also I know that he obviously, if you'll notice, it says he's trying to have self-control, but then obviously he breaks down. So I can see that obviously maybe something pretty bad has happened here, because he finds this woman's glove and he starts crying. And so obviously something has went down here. Another character, we have Miep. We know that she is a Dutch girl, and we also know she's 22 and she's pregnant. And obviously we see something about her because it said she's protective and compassionate toward Mr. Frank. So just from looking at the stage direction, we can see a lot about Mr. Frank, and we can see a lot about Miep, as well as the location of this play. So let's continue. And if you'll notice, pretty much we've got all that information right there for us. So the plot, like we said, he finds this glove. Remember, the plot means the main events. And he starts crying. So we've already, like we said earlier, we can infer that something really bad or tragic has happened here. So let's look a little further. We're going to continue. And this is Act 1, Scene 2 from the same play. So let's look. It is early morning, July 1942. The rooms are bare as before, but they are now clean and orderly. Mr. Van Daan, a tall, portly man, which means a larger man, in his late 40s, is in the main room, pacing up and down, nervous. His clothes and overcoat are expensive and well cut. Mrs. Van Dam sits on the couch, clutching her possessions, a hat box, bags, etc. She is a pretty woman in her early 40s. She wears a fur coat over her other clothes. Peter Van Daan is standing at the window of the room on the right, looking down the street below. He is a shy, awkward boy of 16. At his feet is a black case, a carrier for his cat. The yellow Star of David is conspicuous on all of their clothes. So, if you notice, I don't see any dialogue here, and the words are slanted, so we know this is all part of our stage direction. So remember, stage direction, let's look at our question. What do these stage directions tell you about the setting and the characters? So we can look up here and learn things about the setting and the characters. So let's look about the setting first. So from looking up here, I know it's early morning, 1942, and now they're in the room, but it's clean. So the room that was before, no one had lived there, it was dusty, now it's being cleaned. Let's see what we can figure out about the characters. Well, we see several characters here. Mr. Van Daan, he's tall, he's larger, he's in his late 40s, and he's very nervous. That's important. He looks nervous. Miss Van Daan, we see that she's a very pretty woman. She's in her early 40s, and she wears a fur coat, so maybe she has money, or she's wearing her clothes, the expensive clothes. Peter Van Daan, let's look at him. He's shy, he's awkward, he's 16, and this is something very important. It said they're all wearing the yellow Star of David, and if we were going to read, when we look at this play, the yellow Star of David, Jews had to wear the star during the Holocaust to identify them as a Jew to the Germans. So let's look at what we've determined now. So they've kind of filled it in partly for us, but we have already highlighted all that information. So we know that the stage direction lets us know, like we said, about the setting. We now know it's in a clean room in 1942, and it's early, and we know it's during the time of the Holocaust because of the yellow Star of David. And we know that the characters, we already figured out Mr. Van Daan, he's nervous. Miss Van Daan, she's clutching her possessions. That means she's holding onto him tightly. Tells you something about her. And Peter is very shy and awkward. So let's continue. All right, we've got a little piece of a play here. So we've got two characters here, Mrs. Van Daan and Mr. Van Daan. Right.
Something's happened to them. I know it. Mr. Frank said they'd be here at 7 o'clock. He said...
They have 2 miles to walk. You can't expect.
They've been picked up. That's what's happened. They've been taken.
You see? So, looking at this play, if you'll notice, one, this is dialogue right here. That's very important. When the characters, and it says ... and they're speaking, that's dialogue. Now, as Miss Hicks and I read that play, I just took it off right when I put it on. Oh well. If you notice, there are things that she and I did not read. Things in parentheses. If you'll notice, that is background knowledge. Now, that's stage direction. And it usually tells us what the character, in this case, rising, nervous, excited. That's how she is acting as she speaks her lines. So you wouldn't say that, but if you acted this out as a play, you would do those things. And then also, if you'll notice on down, there's another one. Mr. Van Daan indicates that he hears someone coming. So he would do some kind of hand motion. So that stage direction lets us know how to act it out and when we're acting it out. So let's look at the question. Which statement best describes this plot event based on the dialogue and stage directions in the scene? So we're looking for the plot event based on the dialogue and stage direction. Well, based on the dialogue, the character's talking, and what we know about the stage direction, which we've already underlined, we've underlined that she was nervous, excited. What else do we know based on the dialogue? Well, they had to walk 2 miles, so she says that, and then Miss Van Daan says they've been taken. That means someone took them. So based on this information, let's look at our answer choices. What can we determine about the plot? People the Van Daans know may be in danger. Well, does anything we underline show they may be in danger? Well, maybe it says she thinks they've been taken and they're supposed to show up at 7 o'clock and they haven't arrived. So I'm thinking maybe Ace. I'm going to put a question mark beside it. Mrs. Van Daan is a nervous and excitable person. Well, does that tell us anything about the plot of what's happening here? No, that's just describing her character. Okay? The Van Daans are waiting to have dinner with friends. Well, we know they're waiting. It doesn't say anything about them having dinner, but they are waiting, but it doesn't say they're having dinner, so that's not even true. It didn't say anything about dinner. Mr. Frank called to say he would be running late. Okay? Did Mr. Frank call anyone on this? We don't see anybody where Mr. Frank called at all. In fact, they're worried about them because they're not there and they haven't shown up. So the answer has to be A. And we inferred that they're in danger because she's acting nervous, and he said they were supposed to be here at 7 o'clock. Well, they had to walk 2 miles, and then she says they've been picked up. So obviously they think that the Nazis have discovered them and picked them up.